Yo, what is up? It's been a long time. I'm a little rusty, but yeah, let's begin this. Okay, so I didn't realize how tedious these questions are, so you have to really rely on what I'm saying, okay? And then if I remember, for each question, I'll tell you the main topics for you to review and Google. And I expect you guys not to just hear me say these answers, but you should also be writing, right? That's just a reminder. Okay, so 58. This question, what it's testing is your knowledge on subtracting and adding negative numbers. These aren't integers, they're decimals, right? But the same rules apply. So when I look at this expression, I notice that it's all minus or plus. So that means that it's the same order for PEMDAS, so I can do this way. Okay, so from left to right. So I'm just going to do that. So that means when I look at this left to right, I got to do this. Okay, I do this first. So that means that I have a negative number and a positive number that I'm adding. So I'm just going to remove the signs and subtract 3.8. Oh, my tablet moved. 3.8 minus 2.3. And this is going to be 1.5. Okay. So, but then this is negative. So the the bigger number without the sign, or they say like the number with the bigger absolute value, that's the sign you keep. So this is going to be negative 1.5. Okay, so this piece is negative 1.5. I bring that down, and then I still have to do this minus 1.1, right? And then when I see minus minus, I just think it's like a trigger. That's plus plus, because subtraction is addition with the additive inverse. I made a video on that if you want to look more into the theory. Okay, so what does that mean that we have to do? That means we have to do negative 1.5 plus 1.1. I'm kind of tense right now because I have to meet a friend in like 15 minutes. If I'm late, then oh well. Sorry, buddy. All right, so now I have to do this, right? Negative 1.5 plus 1.1, but that's the same concept of what I said before, right? You're adding two numbers with a different sign, so you're going to remove the signs and subtract. So I need to do 1.5 minus 1.1, so that's going to be 0.4, 0.4, but then this the bigger number without the sign was negative 1.5, so that means the answer is going to be negative 0.4. Great. So next one, 59. This question is testing your geometry knowledge, but mainly also your algebra on how to translate the English into mathematical expressions and equations, and then also systems of equations and solving them. So let's read this together. Angle M and angle R, two angles, are supplementary, because this is a geometry word. Supplementary means that the angles add up to 180 degrees. The measure of angle R is five times the measure of angle M. Is means equals. What is the measure of angle R? So the goal is to get R in degrees. Okay, so there are two angles, M and R. So let's just use these letters to represent their degrees. Measures in degrees. In high school, there's another way. Think of like radians. If you're curious, you can Google that. So M and R are supplementary. So what did I say? So that means that when I add them up, so M plus R, they gotta equal 180. So do you see how the rules just like give you the equation for free? And then let's look at the second sentence. It says the measure of angle the measure of angle R so is five times. So that means R is equal to five literally times M. Okay? And now I need to find R. Okay? So there are a few ways of doing this. You just solve this system based off of what they gave you, right? So this is how I'm gonna do it. So since in the second equation here, R is already solved for, that means it's by itself on the one of the sides of the equation. I'm just gonna solve, use the other one and solve for the other variable and then plug that back in here. So I'm gonna solve for M here. So the first equation, I can subtract both R on both sides to get that M is equal to 180 minus R, right? And then I just gotta plug this back in here. Okay, so then that means that R is equal to 5 times 180 minus R. And then I have to use distributive property. And R is equal to 5 times 180. This is 900. And then 5 times minus R, it's going to be minus 5R. And then I collect the R's. So add 5 R's on both sides. And then I'm going to get 6R is equal to 900, and then you divide by 6 on both sides, and then r is equal to 150 degrees. And that's how you do it. So just for more practice, you can also go further and find m. Okay, you should do that. All right, so 60, I'm just gonna erase this, I need space. Okay, how much time is that? Oh crap, 14 minutes. Okay, so this question is testing your knowledge on ratios, complex fractions, and simplifying them. So a juice mixture contains this amount of something of apple juice and this amount of something cranberry juice. How many gallons of apple juice per gallon of cranberry juice does the mixture contain? So that means that I need to separate this of apple juice per, that means for each gallon of cranberry juice does the mixture contain. And they're making it tedious by asking you to write that as a decimal. Okay, great. These are kind of annoying. Okay, anyways, so let's do that. So a juice mixture contains 3/16 gallon of apple juice. So I'm going to write this like this, 3/16. I must say just apple juice because they're talking about gallons for both. So I'm going to be a little sloppy here. Okay, so that means that's the thing on the top, and it's confusing, right? So this topic is called complex fractions. It's basically fractions where the numerator and denominator can also be fractions, right? So I can do it like that, right? And then the bottom is 340 gallons of cranberry juice. They're talking about cranberry juice. So I put that here. Okay? And now they're asking you what is the gallons of apple juice per gallon of cranberry juice. Okay? Per, that means for each. So you can do that by simplifying this. Okay? Now how do you simplify that? Well, fractions mean divide, right? So that means that I can just pop out the division problem from here. That's literally 3/16 divided, because this means divided by 3/40. And we know dividing fractions, I made a video on that, keep, change, flip. That's just going to be 3/16 times 40 over 3. Okay? And now you just multiply fractions, but there's a quick math, there's a 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom, you cancel out, and then that means the answer is going to be 40 over 16ths. There's too many colors here, sorry. 40 over 16ths, and then when you divide that, that's 40 divided by 16ths, you're going to get 2.5. Great. All right, 61. Okay, this question also is testing your knowledge on translating the English into math expression, but there's a lot going on here, so please be careful. Okay, so what's happening here? This person, Mr. Chan, is growing his lawn, and they're telling you how much it grows. So they're saying every 2 weeks it grows by this much. Grows means plus, right? He mows his lawn. That means there's cutting, right? So subtract when every 2 weeks. So that means that for that period of time, 2 weeks, there's like a net effect, right? So what's happening here? You're adding 2 1/8, right? That's a positive 2 1/8 on the height, and then you're subtracting because you're cutting off 1 3/4. Okay, so let me just keep going. If Mr. Chan's lawn was 4 inches tall at the beginning, so 4 inches tall at the beginning, this means that this is your initial or what you started with, right? And now they're asking you is how many inches tall in, okay, so this is annoying. They wanted it in decimal, okay? But they're saying how many inches tall is Mr. Chan's lawn after 8 weeks? Okay, so this is what I'm thinking. Something happens every 2 weeks. And then they're asking you what is the final height in 8 weeks. So that means you do 8 divided by 2 because that's how many cycles will fit. That's 4 cycles of this behavior that's going on, okay? So there's going to be, we need this 4 somehow. Okay, so what did I say before? I said 2 1/8 minus 1 3/4. That's like the net effect that happens every 2 weeks. So that means that I should do 2 1/8 minus 1 3/4. Okay, and then this is happening 4 times, right? Because there's 4 cycles. So I have to multiply that number by 4, and then it's being added to the initial amount, and that initial amount was 4. So that means that's 4 plus this. So look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That expression in math captures all of that's going on. And now that's going to give us the the final height in in inches after 8 weeks. But then we're gonna have to convert that into decimals. You could do the math by converting this into decimals now, but that's just tedious. So just work with the fractions first, and then if you're comfortable with your fractions, then you can change the to the decimals later. And I think this test has no calculator, so this is good for you. Okay, so let's do this math. All right. Now, this question is even more annoying because you're subtracting fractions with different denominators. That's another topic you should write down. Okay, so I need to do this with PEMDAS. I got to subtract this. Well, I know that the common denominator is 8. So that means 3/4 is another way of saying is 6/8. And so let me subtract that, and it's 2 1/8. Okay, and then let me bring all of that down. But this is even more annoying because when you're subtracting with these fractions, look at that. You don't have enough of the numerator, right? So what you're going to do is you have to reconvert this into a more convenient way so that you can borrow and subtract, right? Because you don't have enough pieces. So 2 1/8, what am I going to do? That's another topic, by the way. I'm going to borrow from my holes, right? So I have 2 holes right now. So let me get that. It's 1. And when you break up that 1 hole, that's 8/8. And I can add that 8/8 back into the 1/8. So 1/8 plus 8/8 is 9/8. So this 2 1/8, another way of saying that is 1 9/8. And now, look at that. Very easy to do. I can subtract them. 9/8 minus 6/8, that's 3/8. 1 minus 1 is 1. So that's just 3/8. And then you multiply that by 4 and you add this. And then now it's just, fraction operations again. 4 is on top, 8 is on the bottom. So this becomes a 2 on the bottom. So that's 4 plus 3 halves. 4 plus 3 halves is 5.5. Well, I'm talking a lot. Okay, so 62. This question is talking about statistics. The table above shows the number of children each of 110 families. Okay, what does it mean? Okay, so this table is basically giving you a distribution of 110 families and how many children they have in each, okay? And now they're asking you for this. This is the topic that they're covering, median. The median means the middle of some data, right? So 110 families, each family has a number associated with it, right? And that number is how many children they have. And now they're asking you for that middle number, right? So, well, if there's 110 numbers, right, because there's 110 families, the middle number is got to be somewhere near this. 110 divided by 2. I've been long divided in a long time. Okay, 2 goes into 10, 5. So it's going to be around 55, right? Around 55. There's a CS topic in here where you can talk about the number of numbers in like a given set. I'll talk more about that later, right? But basically, you know that the middle number has got to be around 55, okay? And now look at this. This table tells you the distribution. They're saying that 45 of the families have 0 children in them. So if I were to represent all 110 numbers as a list, that means I'm going to have 0, 0, da, 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 all those 0. There's 45 numbers here. And then on the 46th number, that's going to be 1. So I'm just going to have 32 ones like that. And then finally, I'm going to have 19 twos and threes like that, okay? And they're just asking you for the middle number, right? At the median, if you learn this, they teach this in school, right? It's like you order the numbers from smallest to greatest, and then So this problem isn't that crazy because, wait, let me give you the answer first, okay? So 45 and 32, so look at that. So there's 45 zeros, and then there's 32 ones, right? 32 ones. So that means that together at the end of this section, there is going to be, 77 numbers. So that means that easily that the median number is going to be 1. So you can kind of get this by not being that precise, but this problem could have been harder if they made the distribution very weird and they tell you to pick specifically in between. But I don't think they're going to do that, but maybe that's a question worth talking about in the future. Okay, I got to bounce, but I got to say, as I'm doing this, right, think about what I'm saying, and then you can try to create the same problems. Do the same problems. Try to change the numbers and apply what I'm saying to that. Okay? And you'll learn a lot from that process and say, oh, maybe why can't these numbers work or something like that. But yeah, okay. Hope you guys are well, and stay tuned. I'll be back, and yeah, stay tuned for the schedule, okay? Peace.